There aren't many bands whose legacy feels untouched, but Linkin Park is one of those. For more than 2 decades, they weren't just another rock band, because to millions of people, they became the soundtracks to their childhoods. Their music helped them through depression, through loss, through addiction, through mental health issues, through some of the darkest moments imaginable. So when Chester Bennington died in 2017, many fans believe that Linkin Park died with him. For 7 years, the band disappeared. No albums, no tours, no future. Until September 2024, a new singer emerged out of nowhere, Emily Armstrong. And then, almost immediately overnight, the fan base was divided. Some believe she was there to save Linkin Park, and some believe they betrayed Chester. To understand why Emily Armstrong became such a controversial figure in the Linkin Park fandom, you first have to understand what Chester Bennington really meant to Linkin Park and its fans. When Hybrid Theory released in 2000, nobody expected what would happen next. The album combined rap, metal, rock, experimental, electronic, and the lyrics were so emotionally vulnerable. And they turned it into something that was far different from what was playing on the radio at the time. Songs like In the End, Crawling, and One Step Closer, they didn't just become hits, they became anthems to millions of people. Hybrid Theory went on to become one of the best-selling debut rock albums of all time. And album after album over almost 2 decades of Meteora and Minutes to Midnight, Thousand Suns, Living Things, The Hunting Party, One More Light, Linkin Park refused to stay in one genre. They refused to stay in one sound. But nothing ever changed, and that was Chester Bennington. Chester simply wasn't just a singer, he was the emotional centre of the whole band. His voice could go from a simple whisper to screaming in agony and intensity, and more importantly, millions of people resonated with him. When Chester sung about pain, when Chester sung about agony, his listeners felt it too. He had openly discussed his childhood trauma, and his depression, his substance abuse, his mental health issues, and he was honest and open, and millions of fans felt understood, which made what happened in July 2017 even more devastating. Chester's death on July 20th, 2017 shocked not just the music industry but the whole world, and tributes poured in from across the globe for him. People shared their stories online about how Linkin Park had saved them, and months later the band performed one last and final tribute concert. It wasn't just a concert, it was a farewell, and for many fans, they thought it was the end of Linkin Park. After Chester's death, the band was left in complete uncertainty, but they never officially broke up, and they never announced a new album either. They were stuck in this kind of limbo. Mike Shinoda later admitted he wasn't sure whether Linkin Park even had a future. He went on to release a solo album called Post Traumatic. It's an intensely personal record, dealing with survivor's guilt and grief and loss and pain, and rebuilding a life after what happened to Chester. It wasn't trying to replace Linkin Park, because nothing ever could replace Linkin Park. Years and years passed. Fans constantly asked the same question. Will Linkin Park ever return and have a comeback? Interviews just spiraled into speculation. Social media posts sparked rumours. No one knew if they would retire, if they would find a new singer, if Mike would take over singing, if they'd become an instrumental band, or if they'd leave the legacy of Linkin Park untouched. Nobody knew, and they didn't even know either. Replacing a lead singer is a struggle in and of itself, but replacing someone like Chester is nigh impossible, because no matter who stood behind that microphone or who wrote those lyrics, they would immediately be compared to someone that millions of people felt was unreplaceable. It wasn't just about their vocal ability, it wasn't about how lyrically inclined they were, about how emotional they were, because to some fans, nothing could ever replace Chester. On the contrary, other fans argued the exact opposite, that Chester would have wanted the legacy of Linkin Park to continue, and that Linkin Park wasn't just Chester, but as a whole band, and everyone knew that replacing Chester would be a difficult job. After 7 years of silence, rumours became a reality. Linkin Park announced a live stream, and no one expected what would happen next. A new chapter in Linkin Park emerged, with Mike Shinoda walking onto stage and the band starting to play. Another person walked onto the stage. It wasn't Chester, but Emily Armstrong, the new lead vocalist of Linkin Park. Immediately there was excitement, but there's also curiosity. Some were relieved that the band has returned, Some were devastated, thinking that Chester was being replaced. So who even is Emily Armstrong? To many casual listeners, Emily Armstrong appeared out of nowhere, and now she's standing on stage leading one of the biggest rock bands in music history. But Emily Armstrong wasn't just an unknown artist. She spent almost 2 decades building up a career in the music industry, long before her time at Linkin Park. Emily Marcia Armstrong was born May 6, 1986 in Los Angeles, California. Growing up, she was surrounded by music at an early age. She loved rock and punk and blues and alternative, and unlike many singers who began their formal vocal training, she developed her voice naturally. She learned to sing along just by listening to records. She played with local musicians and performed anywhere that she could. But her biggest music influences weren't just like metal vocalists. There were artists like Janis Joplin, Stevie Nicks, Robert Plant, and even Kurt Cobain helped shape her voice. Instead of chasing technical perfection, she focused on raw emotions, and it was a style that defined her career. In the mid-2000s, Emily met guitarist Susie Medley, and the two immediately connected over their shared love of hard rock and music, and together they formed a band that eventually would become Dead Sarah. But unlike many rock bands chasing radio success, they built a reputation the old-fashioned way by playing relentlessly at small venues, at festivals, at open slots, playing anywhere and everywhere that they could. And what separated Dead Sarah from all the other rock bands at the time was Emily's voice, because it wasn't polished, it wasn't perfect, but it was powerful and explosive, and it was soulful. Critics often described her performance as unpredictable, and fans loved her because she wasn't perfect, but she was real. And after years of touring, Dead Sarah released their self-titled debut album in 2012. It wasn't a mainstream blockbuster, but the rock community loved it. Their biggest song was Weatherman, and it became their breakout hit, with aggressive guitars and a powerful chorus, and Emily's unmistakable and recognisable voice, which helped it gain traction on rock radios around the world. And to most people, this was their introduction to Emily Armstrong. Although Dead Sarah never reached the arena level type of hype that Linkin Park reached, Emily was constantly praised for her amazing performances. And night after night she delivered emotional and powerful performances with no backing track and no vocal effects, just her and a raw performance. And over the years, Dead Sarah shared the stage with major acts around the world in the rock community. Linkin Park quietly auditioned with musicians, and rather than having it public, they did it quietly, and over many years meeting with many musicians. Mike Shinoda even said in an interview after the announcement that the process of trying out different ideas with various different singers was over a long extended period of time, and the goal wasn't to find the next Chester, it was to find someone who could build the next chapter of Linkin Park, and eventually Emily Armstrong was that person. Now, joining Linkin Park wasn't like joining any other band. It meant stepping into the shoes of one of the biggest and most influential figures in the rock community, because millions of people have already decided that no one could ever replace Chester Bennington. The band knew it and Emily knew it, which is why from the beginning they made it clear that Emily wasn't replacing Chester, but she was becoming part of the next chapter of Linkin Park. And even musically, there's a huge difference between the two voices. Emily's voice carries a rough blues-infused texture shaped by years of hard rock and alternative music, whilst Chester's voice is equally more powerful, but had its own character, with roaring song melodies and powerful emotional screams. Rather than asking Emily to imitate Chester, Linkin Park began rearranging songs to suit her voice. Immediately after Linkin Park's comeback performance, the reaction seemed surprisingly positive at first, and many listeners praised Emily's energy and performance, and many people said that choosing a vocalist with her own identity was the only respectful option. But this moment didn't last that long, because as the excitement spread across social media, people began looking into Emily Armstrong and her past, with old photographs resurfacing, past associations coming to light, rumours spreading faster than verified information ever could, and within days the conversation had shifted. It was no longer just about the music, it had become about something much bigger. The internet did what the internet has always done best. It dug up her past, with old photographs resurfacing and years-old social media posts coming to light. Within days, the discussion around Emily Armstrong had shifted away from music, but instead about her connection to the actor Danny Masterson and her upbringing in the Scientology community. The first controversy was about actor Danny Masterson. He was known for his role on That 70s Show, and he was accused by several women of SA. He went through many years of investigations and legal proceedings, and in 2023, he was convicted of 2 counts of rape and was sentenced to prison. The case quickly went global and had international attention, especially because the allegations involving the Church of Scientology and claims that members had discouraged victims to speak publicly and get help. And as public interest in the case grew, Many people who supported Masterson came to light, and one of those names was Emily Armstrong. Photographs from 2020 show Armstrong outside of Masterson's court appearances, and they quickly spread across social media after she joined Linkin Park. And for many fans, that was enough for them not to like her straight away. Did she support Danny Masterson? Did she still stand by him? Or were people misunderstanding the situation? Several days after the backlash began, Emily Armstrong addressed the controversy publicly, and in a statement shared on social media, she explained that years earlier, she had attended an early court appearance after she was being asked to support someone who she considered a friend. She said she quickly realised she misjudged the situation and chose not to attend future hearings. She also stated that she unequivocally condemns violence against women and expressed sympathy for the victims. But for many fans, that doesn't explain the situation or resolve the issue, and others didn't believe her. And all at the same time, another discussion was gaining momentum and snowballing: Emily Armstrong's connection to the Church of Scientology. But it is important to separate confirmed facts from assumptions. She has spoken publicly in the past about being raised in the Scientology family, but however, being raised within a religion is not the same as publicly endorsing or believing said religion, and that distinction became the centre of the debate. The Church of Scientology is subject to public criticism, and has been criticised for decades. Many members and former members have come forward about the abuse they endured there. High-profile court cases and documentary fueled the fire, and after Emily joining Linkin Park, fans naturally asked the same question: does she still have that relationship with Scientology? The answer wasn't very clear. She never publicly identified as a spokesperson for Scientology, and she didn't explain in interviews her beliefs or relationship with the organisation. And because of this, rumours became facts, and speculation quickly filled the gaps that was left. Some people assumed she was deeply involved in the community, and others said there's no evidence to support this case. So without clear public statements, both sides interpreted the silence differently. I recently asked my YouTube audience what their views were on Emily Armstrong. It currently sits at 3.3 thousand votes, with 34% saying they like her, 6% saying they dislike her, and 60% saying they neither like nor dislike her. Here are a few of my favourite comments that I have read from the post. I think it was very smart for the band to get someone who sounded very different from Chester. Trying to just replicate him just isn't possible, and I think Emily is very good at the songs written for her style. Honestly, I don't really like her, but it's just because I tend to get really attached to musicians since music has always been really important to me. I don't mean this to say I dislike her as a person. I think she has a great voice and is very talented, but I just really can't bring myself to enjoy her. Her singing abilities are fine, but she is a Scientologist. I don't really care. I like her, even though she doesn't have Chester's voice. No one does really. I still think that what she has done for the band is important. As you can see, even my own fan base is divided on if they like her or not. But it seems like the majority do have some sort of positive view of her. In the end, the story of Emily Armstrong isn't really about Emily Armstrong, but it's about expectations and legacy. Because when Linkin Park announced they were returning with Emily Armstrong, they weren't just releasing new music, they were asking for millions of fans to accept and love someone that they never heard of before. They were asking millions of fans to accept and love this new person for this new chapter of their lives, and to carry on the legacy of Chester Bennington and Linkin Park. For some, that's impossible, and for some, they already love her as much as Chester, and for others, continuing the band is exactly what Chester would have wanted. That's all for now. Thank you for sticking around and watching. Let me know what you think of her in the comments down below. Like and subscribe.